The plan had been to give the animal reserve a facelift after a public outcry to keep wildlife in Blackbutt. Council had budgeted $818,000 for the first stage, but some tenders topped the $2 million mark, the cheapest $1.3 million. Alderman John Sutton, who thinks the entire plan should be scrapped, says it's a cost blowout.
I've underestimated the capital costs involved by a very large percentage, and I really think that it's going to cost us a lot more in the long term to maintain it.
Council is now trying to reduce the scope of the plan to cut costs. Lord Mayor John McNaughton says if it takes 10 years, the project will be finished. And last night, Council agreed to advertise for expressions of interest with developers for the Civic site, from the Civic Theatre through to Derby Street. The plan is for the development of prestige office space, specialist shopping, even residential work. One idea is the council's Roundhouse administration building could be transformed into a hotel complex. Tenders are expected by August next year. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
A choir made up of youngsters from years 1 and 2 at Coal Point became overworked little elves for a song that will strike a chord with many. These little elves were performing to please. And the residents seemed to agree. At Stockton Hospital there was music of a different kind. Developmentally delayed patients and children from local special schools were enjoying the goodies that Santa had to offer, but you had to be quick. Santa had some extra little helpers on hand, Knights players who now have a few more fans. At Maitland Pool, hearing impaired students from schools across the Hunter had their annual Christmas get-together. If you didn't feel like a swim, there was a serious game of cricket or a parachute on hand. This time Santa arrived by ambulance and Rutherford High's Matthew Torres had his acting debut. Santa's uniformed helper wasn't letting these bags full of priceless gifts out of sight, and having given Santa that all-important Christmas shopping list, Farah, Marie, Jeff and Anthony gave us all a lesson in signing. Here's We Wish You a Merry Christmas.
It's almost 2 years to the day since the 400 workers at Carrington Slipways received the cruelest of Christmas presents. They learnt the company was in receivership and their jobs were lost. But according to these former employees, Christmas 1992 isn't going to be much better as they continue to fight for money they say is owing to them.
About $800,000, close to $1 million, just in long service leave and annual leave. Yeah.
And what about redundancy payout on top of that?
Another 1.8 million.
The workers say they've received only half their award entitlements and no redundancy payout. The group has been meeting with federal parliamentarians asking for their help. The men hope their case will be covered by a proposed legislative change which gives workers, rather than the tax office, priority in recovering money owing from companies that have gone under.
It's a last-ditch effort, this one. After this, if the legislation can't be changed to accommodate us, that's it.
But the workers' hopes for help from the new tax law seem to be in vain. A spokesman for Attorney General Michael Duffy says the new legislation won't come into effect until July next year, and there's no chance of it being applied retrospectively to existing cases. Carrington Slipways ex-employees will meet at 2 p.m. on Saturday in Islington Park to work out what else can be done to recover their money. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
It's a great time to capture their imagination and teach them what science is about and what the world around them is about. Our goal is really not to teach these students. Our goal is to show them science from an entirely different viewpoint to that which they've either seen at school or perhaps in movies.
According to Head of the Physics Department, Associate Professor John O'Connor, the summer school will hopefully become an annual event at Newcastle University. With continuing support from local Rotary clubs and sponsors Pacific Power, gifted students will no longer have to make the trek to Sydney. Aiming at students from Year 10 through to 12, the summer school encompasses workshops in biology, geology, chemistry, geography and physics. The students travelled from as far afield as Taree in the north to Morisset in the south and West Cobar, and were eager to get their hands-on equipment in the lab. As Professor O'Connor points out, the importance of this generation gaining an understanding of science and technology is essential if we are to keep pace with the rest of the world.
We're supposed to be a clever country, and in order to become a clever country, then we really have to train people to do the tasks that await us. And these tasks involve studies and improvements in the environment, plus improvements in technology. And we really need people who go into science.
With this summer school to be the first of many, prospects are looking good for youthful scientific talent in the Hunter. Catherine Wood, NBN News.
Caring for the disabled can be a demanding and full-time role. To offer a temporary break for both the carer and the cared for, the Hunter Mission has launched a respite program, which manager David Hogg says is in great demand in the region.
In our research, we came up with the fact that respite care, especially for people with disabilities, is a real area of need in the upper and lower Hunter.
The program offers a range of services for up to 20 people in their own homes or in the community, with the emphasis on the client's wishes.
The beauty of the program is that the client themselves chooses what sort of respite they would like, and it may mean that they want to go to the pictures and spend a day shopping.
The Hunter Mission is hoping to open a respite care house in the city next year, using the mix of government and corporate funding to build up the program.
Rush, whose career spans 20 years of oval track racing, 10 Australian titles and 9 New South Wales crowns, is the doyen of the sprint car circuit, but there is a group of youngsters ready to step into his shoes. Brooke Tatnell, Skip Jackson and the brothers Linton and Paul Jeffries will make it tough for Rush and the other senior drivers, including George Tatnell, Bob Tunks and Bob Blacklaw. The Winfield Classic is always keenly contested and is sure to be a highlight of this year's Motordrome program. Modified rods will also appear, and it will be interesting to see if Alan Harris can stay the right way up after a couple of big flips last season.
This sports store in Moree was broken into for the 7th time in 3 years yesterday. The shop owner, Bruce Osmond, says it was a group of about 10 youths who vandalised the store and stole $1,500 worth of sporting equipment. A garbage bin was thrown through the window to gain entry. Moree Shire President Greg Jones feels that the problem is a long-term one and can only be solved through greater community involvement.
A small committee was elected from the community to become far more proactive in getting around the families in town and talking to them and talking to the kids themselves.
One of the solutions which has been suggested is to introduce a curfew in Moree.
To implement a curfew means you are penalising the whole community for probably only a few people. But, what else can we do on an initial basis?
The Shire President emphasised that the final decision on the implementation of a curfew would have to come from the local community.
From my point of view, it would have to come from the community. If the community at large wanted us to try it, well then as a council we would look at it and see how it could be done.
In total, 21 officers were honoured today for their dedication and commitment to saving lives. It was early Friday evening, June 12th. Ambulance officers Glenn Hogan and Bob Brady and paramedics Dave Higgins and Brian Ardley were called to a truck crash on the Pacific Highway just north of Bulahdelah. The cabin of the semi was balanced precariously on a safety railing above a 10-metre drop as the officers worked to free the trapped driver. The men were commended for their bravery, putting themselves at great personal risk. One officer suffered burns to his face and hands from acid leaking from the truck's battery. The men were proud to accept their awards, but insisted it was just part of the job. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
As a national party, the Greens was formed only 4 months ago. Newcastle candidate for the upcoming federal election is 28-year-old James Whelan. Since moving to the area from Queensland last year, he's become actively involved in local environmental issues. He says support for the Greens policies, now in draft form, will provide the votes needed to secure an environmental future.
I vote for ecological sustainability, for grassroots democracy, nuclear disarmament and peace, and social and economic justice. and a genuine commitment at federal level to those principles.
Historic Richmond Vale Colliery, once the showpiece of the area's mining operations, was a befitting site for today's unprecedented sale.
The crowd confirms, I believe, the speciality of today's event. It's definitely historic and it's an excellent event for the Hunter Valley.
31 parcels of land totalling more than 800 hectares came under the auctioneer's hammer. Early bidding was off to a healthy start. A century ago, 1 hectare would fetch $5. Today they were selling for just under $1,000. The event attracted buyers from across the Hunter and Sydney, the land on offer stretching from Millfield in the west to Mandalong in the south. The highest price went to a Mandalong parcel, coming in at a competitive $380,000.
You guys must see some gruesome ones over the years.
The centre at the Police Citizens Youth Club has been painstakingly transformed over the last 10 months, with this colourful mural now covering the walls. The centre is aimed at 10 to 18-year-olds to give them something to do at night time.
Basically the only thing that we have got, or any options that we have got, is the centre. Unless you're into sporting, there's nothing available for kids.
The centre will be officially opened by Angry Anderson on Friday afternoon. The ceremony will be preceded by a march through the city's streets by up to 1,500 young people as a show of support for the centre. Organisers hope that the centre will be largely run by the youths who use it.
I'm looking not only at the entertainment side but at an educational side during the daytime as well, having the night, having discos, plays, whatever the kids come up with basically. It's their centre.
The federal government subsidises patient care dependent on the level of the person's disability. The reclassification means fewer of them now attract the top level of subsidy, leaving private nursing homes to find a greater share of their operating costs. The changes have caused a huge problem for nursing homes like the one at Hawkins Masonic Village.
Your limit of finances in a nursing home setting is narrowing every couple of months. They keep changing the goalposts.
Director of Nursing William Gordon has proposed drastic changes to staff rostering, resulting in the sacrifice of 6 permanent positions to ensure part-time work for his nursing staff of 15.
We are not here for ourselves, we're here for the client, and if we can maintain client care at the highest value, again, we're going to achieve something at the least possible cost to everyone concerned, and that's what I'm all about.
The new roster will result in longer shifts, but 5 hours less work a fortnight for each employee. It's a proposal which most of the nursing staff say they're prepared to accept, while others are bitterly opposed to any drop in pay. As part of the Hunter Sewage Project, which began in 1988, residents have been advised that a sewer service access charge of $2,800 has to be paid by early 1993. The charge, affecting about 140 property owners, applies to land occupied after the cut-off date of December the 5th, 1988. For Robin Roberts, the cost is in addition to the $2,500 spent on her existing septic system. She says she was never informed of the charge until she recently received this pamphlet in the post. With her husband employed only part-time and 2 children to care for, finances are limited.
I've got no idea at all what we are going to do.
The Hunter Water Corporation says it did everything in its power to inform property owners of the sewage access charge. The corporation says owners are in a better position paying the one-off charge, an amount considerably less than the average cost of providing sewage services to properties. Acting Managing Director Peter Filler says the revenue needs to be raised and it would be unfair to ask other ratepayers to foot the bill.
People who don't pay the charge won't be allowed to connect. But if there's genuine hardship, then we'd like to try and help those people.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
It wasn't just the Christmas tree that was decorated, the entire children's ward was transformed.
The best thing about today is the party and the clown and the food and all that.
10-year-old Nick Willis, who's bedridden with a broken leg, celebrated with the other kids at the hospital. The opportunity wasn't missed to put in a few last-minute requests for Christmas.
You want some rollerblades, eh? Gee, Santa's got a lot of orders for rollerblades this year. Oh, lots and lots of orders.
Meanwhile, in the cancer ward of the John Hunter, family and friends presented doctors with a cheque for about $24,000. The money was raised earlier this year from a swim-a-thon at Merewether Ocean Baths.
The money will be used for furthering the research into cures and ways of treating cancer with children.
It was all hands on deck today as the crew of Let's Go put in some last-minute preparations at the Royal Motor Yacht Club of Toronto. Let's Go is one of 4 lake entrants taking on the famous race. It left this afternoon heading for Sydney, where it will compete in a number of preliminary races. It'll be the first time the 52-footer will tackle the historic Sydney to Hobart, but skipper Alan Ovenden is confident of a good showing.
Well, we have to finish in the first 15, somewhere in the first 15 out of 120 odd boats, so we're fairly ambitious.
Let's Go's main competition will be another local entrant, Lake Macquarie's Oz Fire, skippered by Doug Coulter. Oz Fire is already in Sydney and will start its campaign in the Asia Pacific Championship. Ovenden is looking forward to the challenge.
Well, they're our natural closest competitor. Seeing as they come from the east side of the lake, we come from the west side of the lake. They're excellent competitors, actually.
Dennis Pomfrey's Ninja Go and Mike Kelleher's New Horizon are the other local entrants. All will compete in the IMS class. Matthew White, NBN News.
It was this incident in 1980 that set Charlie Swartz aside from the average run-of-the-mill, mild-mannered competitor. But one undeniable fact was that although he left the country and vowed never to return, Swartz is one of the greatest dirt track drivers around, and although he may have mellowed, there's still the fire in the belly.
I got fond memories of the place, really. We got in a little trouble a couple times, but
I really enjoy coming here, and I like getting fired up, and and this place gets me excited. It's kind of a pretty neat deal where you're racing against another country, and it just fires me up good, And of course, I've mellowed out a lot, I think, since the last time I was here, but not too much. We should get some excitement.
Sunday night's ISP Super Sedan Masters will see the best in the land of Oz up against not only Swartz, but his countryman Scott Bloomquist, the holder of 3 world records on oval track racing and a list of other victories as long as your arm. He's out to restore some American pride.
The equipment being right-hand drive, I don't think will have much effect. I think we get a little time in the race car and get some time to work things out. I've always been able to adapt real well to different race cars. We've even done some road racing stuff, left and right-hand turns, and I adapt real quick to it. So I think if I get a little time in it, we're going to be in good shape.
Reg Baker is an 85-year-old widower who's used the home care service for more than a decade. Suffering from a heart condition and other illnesses, he's relied on a home carer paying him a visit once a fortnight to help keep his house in order. This week, Reg received a letter from the Department of Community Services informing him that he was no longer on the books. He says he's tried to keep his lifestyle independent, but some days he needs a little help.
It's helped me a lot. I kept the place something like it was when the wife was alive.
Member for Newcastle Bryce Gaudry says he's received many complaints, including one from a 94-year-old pensioner who's also been cut. He believes that the early release of acute care patients from the hospitals is putting a huge strain on community services, which has reassessed those on the books. He's asking answers from the Minister and believes the department's short-term solution will result in an expensive problem.
This is a very cost-effective way of keeping people in their homes. If that funding is cut away, we're looking at people who will finish up in nursing home care or hospital care, and that is very, very expensive care.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
For 12 years, the Hunters paramedics have raced against time and tragedy in the rescue helicopter to save lives. But today, time was on their side as 26 serving and former paramedics got together with a dozen helicopter crew members to commemorate the flying of 2,000 missions.
Very nostalgic indeed, because I think each of the paramedics here today can reflect over many hundreds of cases where they've seen people in critical situations where they've been very, very badly injured or ill, and they've actually brought them through with a helicopter to ultimately save their life.
The Hunters rescue chopper was the first in Australia to take paramedics on board. Crew member Graham Nickerson has spent hundreds of hours training the paras, and he was recognised by his charges with a plaque of his own.
12 years ago, we'd never ever realised or contemplated that we'd be in this sort of situation here today.
The 2000th mission was flown on the weekend, but for two paramedics, today's celebrations were all too short. They had to rush off to an emergency. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Michelangelo thought he had his work cut out with the Sistine Chapel. John Montefiore began sketches for his Life series painting in 1967. 25 years later, and there is still a chance of more.
If we hadn't really given him a deadline for the space, if we gave him another 10 years, I think he'd still be going on it.
The Newcastle Regional Gallery has the Newcastle University teachers' work on display for the next 6 weeks. The 18-metre painting is a story of life from birth through adolescence to death. It contains Christian and Eastern symbolism, but don't expect to have a complete understanding in one visit. You may need to come back for more.
I've seen it many times over the last year, and of course in a concentrated fashion now, but I keep finding new things all the time. I think it deserves many, many viewings.
Ever since natural gas arrived in Newcastle from South Australia nearly 10 years ago, the higher tariff here than in Sydney, and particularly Wollongong, has been a bone of contention.
For a small, medium-sized industrial company that wants to use 400 gigajoules a month of gas, then their bill, if they set up that new industry in Newcastle, is $60,000 a year, compared with $44,000 in Sydney and only $40,000 in Wollongong for the same gas usage. Now that means it's very hard for business to make a decision to set up in Newcastle if gas is their energy source, and that hurts Newcastle for jobs and for new business.
Initially, it was explained as a pricing necessity to cover the cost of the extra northern pipeline, with the difference to be eliminated within a few years.
The Greiner government, when it came in 1988, had one of its promises that it would reduce and eliminate the gas pricing anomaly in Newcastle within 4 years. They haven't done that. And secondly, the governmental regulation authority is the Gas Council of New South Wales, and one of their responsibilities has to be to ensure that there's equity in the pricing structure. Really, we should have a common pricing policy all over the East Coast.
The Newcastle Chamber of Commerce and Industry has made several efforts through the years to have the issue addressed, and while the difference has been reduced, there's still a long way to go.
We're disappointed with the results we've achieved to date. We have had acknowledgement that the differential is there, and gradually they're going to reverse the position, but it's not easy.